Hello everybody and welcome to this video solving multi-step equations. This is 3.3b, so the second part of our multi-step equations. So what we need to do here, we need to start off with 4.5 minus 1.5 times 6m plus 2 equals 6. Well, if we're looking to use PEMDAS, we have to figure out what numbers, are in the parentheses. So we have 6m plus 2, but we can't really do anything with that. So we need to look outside the parentheses, and what I see is a negative 1.5 outside of my parentheses right here. So now I'm going to take this negative 1.5 and my 6m plus 2, and I'm going to draw our box. And I get negative 1.5 in front and 6m plus 2 on top. Now if I multiply negative 1.5 times 6, I get negative 9m. And if I multiply negative 1.5 times 2, I get negative 3. So now my equation reads 4.5 minus 9m. So I'm going to take this 9m out of my box and bring it down. Then minus 3. This negative 3 is coming down as well. Equals 6. Now I see that I do have like terms. I have 4.5 and minus 3. So if I do 4.5 minus 3, I get 1.5 minus 9m equals 6. So that means I need to look to see if I have any constants or numbers without variables. Well, I have 1.5 here. That's a positive, so I'm going to do the opposite of positive and subtract it from both sides. Now what I get is negative 9m equals 6 minus 1.5, which is 4.5. Divide that by negative 9. And I get that to cancel out. And m equals 4.5 divided by 9, which is negative, because one of our numbers is negative, 0.5. Or if you want to write that as a fraction, m equals negative 1/2. So that's our first problem. Our second problem, we have a shape here. We're looking for the x around the outside. We know that the perimeter, or all of these added together, is 23 feet. So I know that x plus 2x plus x plus 3 equals 23. So now I need to look for common variables. I have x, x, and x, so I can combine all three of these. Now if I combine x and 2x, I get 3x. But then if I combine one more x, I'll get 4x. So I'll have 4x plus 3 equals 23. Then I have to subtract 3 to get rid of that. Those cancel out because 3 minus 3 is 0. And now 4x equals 23 minus 3, which is 20, divided by 4. 20 divided by 4 is 5. So that means that my x is 5. So if my x is 5, I know that this side is 5. This side is 2x, so 2 times x. So I know that this side is 10 feet. And this one is x plus 3. So 5 plus 3 gives me 8 feet. Alright, our next problem says, a flock of cranes migrates from Canada to Texas. The cranes take 14 days, or 336 hours, to travel 2,500 miles. The cranes fly at an average speed of 25 miles per hour. How many hours of the migration are the cranes not flying? So what we need to do is we need to figure out what's important. Well, we know that they're traveling 2,500 miles. We know that also they're traveling at 25 miles per hour. We know that in total it takes them 336 hours to get there. But that may not be the whole time that they're flying. So what we need to do is we need to figure out how fast it would take them to get there if they flew the whole way. So, because we're looking for not flying. So if we get 25, we don't know how many hours it takes them, so we're going to put an h there, or any variable that you want to, equals 2,500. If we divide this by 25, and divide this by 25, we get h equals 2,500 divided by 25, that's 100. Now this is 100 hours if they just decided to fly straight through. So if they were super cranes and they didn't have to rest, it would take them 100 hours just to fly straight from Canada to Texas. But we know that the whole migration takes 14 days, or 336 hours. So because we have hours here, we're going to use this measurement. So it says it takes them total 336 hours. That's our total. We know flying, it takes them 100 hours. So what we're going to do then is we're going to subtract it to see how much time they spent not flying. So 6 minus 0, well that's 6. 3 minus 0, that's 3. And 3 minus 1, that's 2. So it took them, it took them 100 hours if they were just flying, but they spent 236 hours not flying. That's how long they spent on the ground. Alright, let's move on. Here we're solving equations, but now we have fractions thrown into the mix. So our first one, we have 3/5 outside of 5m plus 15 in parentheses. So we know that if we have a number outside of our parentheses, we can distribute it. So what I'm going to do is draw my box, put 3/5 on the outside, 5m on top, plus 15 on the other top of the box. So if I'm doing 3/5 times 5, well, you could put that in your calculator, but I know that we can divide 5 by 5 and get 1. 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 and plus 1 will give me 5. What I'm looking for is 3 of those. So if I cross out those, I have 1 plus 1 plus 1, and I get 3m. Here, 15 divided by 5 gives me 3. So that means I have 5 3's. So 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3. 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 will give me 15. But it says I only need 3 of them. So if I cross out 2, 3 plus 3 plus 3, that gives me 9. So then my new equation will be 3m plus 9 equals negative 12. Alright, then I can subtract 9 from both sides. I get 3m equals negative 12 minus 9, which is negative 21, divided by 3. M equals negative 21 divided by 3, which is negative 7. If I go on to my next one, I get 28 equals, now I have a negative 4/5 outside, and in my box, or on top of it I mean, I'm going to have 4a minus 1. Now this is a number or a multiplication problem that it might be easiest to use your calculator. So if I put negative 4/5 into my calculator times 4, that gives me negative 3.2. Okay? And negative 4/5 times negative 1, well, that just gives me positive 4/5, or 4/5 as a fraction is 0.8, or not, a decimal I mean, is 0.8. So then I get 28 equals negative 3.2 a plus 0.8. Since I have a plus 0.8, the opposite of that is going to be minus. If I subtract 0.8 from both sides, 28 minus 0.8 gives me 27.2 equals negative 3.2 a. Divide through negative 3.2 from both sides. Now if I put that in my calculator, 27.2 divided by negative 3.2 gives me negative 8.5. So A equals negative 8.5. Now we have a couple more fractions. Another way we could do that, instead of multiplying everything else out by a fraction, we could get rid of this fraction right away by doing the opposite, or the reciprocal. So what the reciprocal is we're going to multiply it instead by the opposite. So instead of 2/5, we're going to multiply by 5/2. So if we multiply one side by 5/2, we also have to multiply the other side by 5/2. And if we multiply this, we're going to make the 10 into a fraction. So we have 5 times 10. We get 50. 2 times 1 gives us 0, or 2 I mean, equals, now if this is canceled out, we don't need that anymore. So we just have the 3r plus 4. Now we can simplify this right away. 50 divided by 2, that gives us 25, equals 3r plus 4. Now we subtract 4 from both sides to get rid of our constant. 25 minus 4 gives us 21 equals 3r. And lastly, we divide by 3 on both sides. And r equals 21 divided by 3, which is 7. Okay, and our last problem. We're also going to do this one by finding the reciprocal. So the reciprocal of negative 3/4 will be negative 4/3. We're just flipping our fraction. What we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So we're going to multiply this side by negative 4/3. We can cross these out. They're no longer needed. And we have w minus 6 equals, we make this into a fraction, 12 over 1. 12 times negative 4 gives me negative 48 over 1 times 3, that's 3. So now we have w minus 6, and we can simplify this. Negative 48 divided by 3, that gives us negative 16. We only have one step on this one after this. Add 6 to both sides to get w by itself. Then w equals negative 16 plus 6, which is negative 10. Now, whichever way is easiest for you, do that. If it means distributing, distribute. Or if it means finding the reciprocal, find the reciprocal. It does not matter. You'll get the same answer no matter what. Alright, that's it for today.